We are going to transition to the next step, which is the seasons on Earth and how they occur, with a little story about Greece. Back in 1987, my wife and I went on a trip to Europe. The dollar had been strong for the previous couple of years before that, so we saved about the same amount of money. We got to Europe in 1987 and the dollar became exceptionally weak. We were traveling around in Northern Europe and running out of money quickly. Because of that, we decided to go to Greece. Greece was cheap then, Greece is cheap now. So we went down to Greece and we did what people that age, I was 24 at the time, do, which is go hang around on the islands. Santorini, Mykonos, Ios, all these places. So we went down to the islands, and you can't see me, but I have very light skin. I'm 70% Irish. My wife is of East European extraction. Because of that, she has darker skin. First day, we went out to the beach. We lay down on the beach for about an hour and a half. On one side, I pressed my skin. It was just a little bit pink, not too bad. Decided to flip over and do the other side. Waited about an hour and a half and decided to go into our hotel, which is something I use very loosely because in reality, it didn't even have windows. The room we had bars on a door. That was it. There was a hen house behind the room, so the rooster crowed at 4 o'clock in the morning, and because the door was made out of metal and wasn't secure to the floor, mice would crawl under at night. It was a very exciting time. You know, we were young, so we could handle it. I was 24, as I said. What people do on the islands typically is they hang around the beaches all day long, then they go in, they take a nap, they go out for dinner, then they go out and dance and party and have a good time for the rest of the night. They struggle into their room, they go to sleep, and then you rinse and repeat. Back then, people really didn't use sunscreen, and I did not use sunscreen. We went back to the room, I laid down, took a nap, I woke up, and I looked like a cooked lobster. I couldn't even put a shirt on because it felt like razor blades scraping my skin. The next day, we get up, we're going to go to the beach. Well, I was sitting under a palapa, hiding from the sun, drinking, and my wife was running around on the beaches back then with all of these Scandinavians, and the beaches in Greece at that point were nude and semi-nude. I didn't think this was a good scene. So we got on a boat, and we took an overnight ship that went back, a huge cruise ship, back to Athens. We had already staked out a room at a hotel. We got to the hotel at 9 o'clock in the morning. We'd been up all night long with these Scandinavians partying on the ship all night. And we got to the hotel. There was a little lobby. There was no air conditioning. It was $10 a night. It was a cheap place. And I asked the guy if he had a room for us. He said, I do, but not until about 11 o'clock. Sit down on the couch. I'll get you a coffee. He brought us 2 little demi-tasks of coffee, espresso. They call it Turkish coffee in Turkey and Greek coffee in Greece, but you don't reverse those two because the Greeks and the Turks have problems with each other. What they do is they grind up the grounds very fine, and then they boil it in with the hot water, and they pour it all into the demi-tasse, into a little espresso cup. So it's grounds and fluid. They serve this with a little cube of sugar and a little glass of water. What you're supposed to do is put the sugar in, stir it around, take a little sip, drink some water, wait, and drink the whole thing over 20 minutes or a half hour. But we were Americans used to drinking Folgers and Hills Brothers. We drank gallons of coffee. So we just poured it down, threw it down in one shot. And of course it was like methamphetamine. So we were shaking, sitting there, and it was hot as could be. And the man working behind the desk looked over and he could see that we were sweating and sort of shaking a little bit. And he said, it's going to be very hot today. It's going to be 45. And we were like, 45? What does that even mean? We don't know what that means. The point of this is that in science, everything is done with a metric system. The only reason in the United States we get away with doing something else is because we're so powerful. But everybody else operates on the metric system. Now, I'm not going to make you know the conversion with feet, inches, miles into kilometers and centimeters and all of that. But we do talk a lot about temperature. And so you're going to know the conversion from Fahrenheit to Celsius and Celsius to Fahrenheit. Here we go. So we're going to start with the Celsius to Fahrenheit conversion. This is the way it works. It's degrees Celsius times 1.8 plus 32 equals Fahrenheit. I'm not a math teacher, and I had math a long time ago. But when you have two numbers next to each other, you multiply them, you do that first, then you do everything else. So you can see degrees Celsius and 1.8 are next to each other, you'll multiply them. I told you it was 45 degrees that day. 45 times 1.8, do that first, then plus 32. 45 times 1.8 is 81 plus 32, 113 degrees Celsius. Yes, it was blazing hot. I got back to France about a week and a half later, and I called my mother, and she was very concerned because Greece was on the news. People were dying. I had been walking around in Athens hearing all of these sirens, and I thought the sirens was, must be crime or something like that. No, it's because most of Athens back then didn't have air conditioning, and a lot of people cannot handle long periods of time at that kind of temperature. And literally, they were dying. What I want you to know is, at that point, it was one of the hottest recorded heat waves in history in Greece. And since then, that was 1987, this has been beaten over and over because something is happening on this planet. The other way is from Fahrenheit to Celsius, which works like this. Degrees Fahrenheit minus 32 divided by 1.8 equals Celsius. So you would plug in whatever the temperature in Fahrenheit was, say it's 65, you take 65 minus 32, you do that first because it's in that parenthetical. Then you divide by 1.8, and that would give you Celsius. Yes, it will be on the exam.